How you been?
Awesome.
Awesome. Everything is awesome.
Everything is wunderbar. Is wunderbar.
Wunderbar.
How about you?
Pretty good.
Been rocking it out?
Pretty standard.
Pretty standard.
You know what? I've been doing some metanoia-ing.
Yeet.
Really have. I've been doing some
You've been doing some repenting?
repentance.
Turn. What you been repenting of? Your sin?
You
Your
know,
sinful ways?
I don't know what you'll think about this, but I actually think that me and you have kind of been doing similar sort of things in this regard. Being open to being taught.
Yeah.
I think that's something that, based on the conversations me and you have had
Yeah.
recently, I think maybe that's something that we're both doing right now.
Just trying to expand, not try to box yourself in, really, I think is the way I would say it, because if you get in these rigid mind frames of like my way or the highway, I guess that's way too general of a way to put it, but you know what I mean? Like if you
Right.
get too much in that mindset, then you like trap yourself in a box, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So, like, yeah, I mean, the main area that I'm kind of referring to is like in regards to like scripture, but it's been, I think I've had my eyes open to some stuff recently, even outside of that though, as far as just like not, because it's the same concept. Basically, what I was thinking about today, I was thinking about the scriptures and how, there's the more modern view of inerrancy.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's not really what we mean. I don't think that's what the scriptures mean whenever the scriptures themselves speak about being inspired.
Right.
And I don't think that's what at least the first 1,500 years or so, or I mean
Right.
the Chicago Statement on Inerrancy or whatever, that was in like the 70s. So I mean, prior to that, I don't know that like. Yeah, we just have like a real rigid view of inerrancy and inspiration
Right.
now that I don't think was there before. And like, I mean, if you just think about inerrancy, if you think about like what is entailed in that, it's like frozenness, like can't, like there's no flow. Does that make sense? Stagnant. Like if something is truly inerrant, that means that it's in one sense it's like immovable.
Yeah, I mean, in order for it to actually be inerrant, that means it would have to have a like one static meaning or answer.
Right.
You know what I mean? So like
Static
it sort of limits it.
Yes. And that's kind of what I was thinking about, like using even that word that you used there, like static.
Static, yeah.
That means that it's standing still. There's no
Right.
movement.
Right.
And that's just not how the Spirit works. The Spirit moves
Right.
and flows, and we're supposed to.
Perichoresis.
Right, exactly.
It's the great love dance, the flow of it all, the flow of the Godhead. So it's the very nature of God is flowing and moving.
Exactly. And that's like, it's especially aggravating, I think, for like Pentecostals who have kind of fallen into that view of inerrancy, because like as Pentecostals, what's like the one thing that we're kind of known for is movement, lively. Like,
Right.
like we believe that God, we're not, what's the word? Cessationist. We believe that the Spirit is active.
Active, right.
We believe that the Spirit is on the move.
Right.
We believe that in our worship services, they reflect that liveliness, right? That movement, that unpredictability, the movement of the Spirit, that you don't know what's going to happen, when you come in here. So why do we not understand that that's exactly what the Spirit intends to do through the reading of the Scriptures?
Right.
And so...
Yeah, I mean, me and you were talking about that a little bit last night, right? Because I think that there is it's what, 1 Timothy 3:16, or is it 2 Timothy? First? I think it's first. where it's just the God breathed.
I was thinking it was the second Timothy, but
Either way, it's 3:16. I know that because I remember because John 3:16. But the whole idea of inspiration that we get from the word that the Greek word that is more literally translated as God breathed. Like I think that should make us recall Genesis 2:7, which is when God breathes into man, and then man becomes a living spirit or a living soul, depending on the translation that you're using. So like, without that breath of God, man is just a lump of dirt. But what makes man alive is that breath, right? And that same breath is God breathed into the scriptures. So like, it should be the very opposite of stagnant and static. It's living and always moving. Like that's a hallmark of a human being is that we're not like a rock planted in the ground, stagnant and static, but we're constantly moving and evolving and growing. And like, that's to me how the scriptures are alive, is that they're like, that's how they're just as applicable to me as they were applicable to people that were living 1,500 years ago or 2,000 years ago, is because they are constantly moving and evolving because they're alive with the breath, the Spirit of God, Right. I mean, to me, the whole inerrant thing to me is just sort of a silly conversation. It's more of a distraction than anything, because even if they were, let's just, for argument's sake, let's say that the scriptures are perfectly inerrant. Are you inerrant? Am I inerrant? Is my understanding of the scriptures inerrant? Is anybody's understanding of the scriptures inerrant? Well, if the answer is no, then who cares if they're inerrant? It's of no use to us if they're inerrant, if we're not inerrant.
Right.
Because we can't comprehend it anyway. You know what I mean? So, like, to me, the whole argument of the inerrancy of scriptures is just a moot point. It's who cares?
Yeah.
Because unless I'm inerrant, it doesn't matter.
Right. And see, and that's like, all of that is stuff that I was thinking about today, but that's not. When I said I repented, what I have been repenting of is, I notice within myself, and it's only become more and more clear lately, I notice that I'm way too quick to read the Hebrew scriptures with a sort of coming into the reading of them with a sort of false sense of moral superiority. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's like, how do we know that the author of Joshua doesn't know that the slaughtering of the Canaanites is horrendous?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I think that it's too easy for us to say, well, we have Jesus, and we look back at the Old Testament and we're like, oh, well, these people are horrible people. And you approach the Old Testament with this sort of like superiority complex, like this sort of like assumption that you know better. But what if we don't? Like, and that's not to say, obviously, that genocide is cool.
Right.
I'm not saying that in the least bit. But what I am saying is, like, maybe the authors of the text knew that all along. But we can't even begin to learn the lessons that those texts have to teach us because we approach them already assuming that we know better. You know what I mean? So that's something I've been thinking about, and I don't know how you feel about that, but it kind of goes right along with, like, there's things that I've said before recently to you about, like, things that, like, there's certain folks or certain, like, groups of folks that, like, I do that same thing with almost. It's like I go into this assuming that I know more.
Mm-hmm.
And then in so doing, I shut myself off to learning anything.
Right.
Yeah,
for sure. I mean, I guess, I don't know. I would have to, this is the first time we've talked about it, so I would have to think through some of the implications of it, I guess, because in a way I do think that, like, not in a, like, I'm a better or smarter kind of way, but in a way I think that we do know more than some of those, because to me that's kind of I don't want to say the whole point of Jesus, but that was a big part of what Jesus, his mission to me was to reveal the Father to us. Until we had Jesus, no one had ever seen the Father. So, I mean, yeah, in a way, I think everybody post Jesus does have a clearer vision of who God is, and so I mean I think that that's bound to reflect in the scriptures. You know what I mean? So in a way, I mean I do think there is truth to that, but not in so much in that we should box ourselves into being able to learn whatever there is to glean from it. Also, you know.
And I think I do think that that's true, but I also think that like maybe I've put too much emphasis on that perspective on it than maybe I should have. That like, you know, I mean, who are we to say that like in the Old Testament scriptures, like whenever Moses sees the back of God, how do we know that's not Jesus' back? Like, you know what I mean? Like that kind of deal. Like, how do we know that they didn't have any sort of
I mean,
revelation of Jesus?
Yeah, I don't think it would be fair, and that's probably a good conversation too, is because I don't think it would be fair to say they didn't have any. I mean, to me, that's how the scriptures, especially the Old Testament scriptures, work. Is it's man's progressive understanding of God, who God is, until it reaches its culmination with Jesus. Like that's sort of the approach that I generally take with the Old Testament scriptures. It's like there is revelation all throughout there, but you never get the full and complete picture until we get to Jesus, right? So I think, even in the midst of all those stories, I mean, one of the most picked on, let's say, stories in the Old Testament's the flood, right? It's an atrocious story because every single living thing on earth dies except for the small amount of things that are contained on this ship. Well, that's even used as a picture of Jesus in Hebrews. Isn't it Hebrews, I think?
I know that Peter picks it up as a symbol for baptism.
But I mean, the Passover is like used. That's atrocious. Like God is giving the I don't know what's the word for it there, but he's blamed, I guess you would say, for killing a lot of children there. Right. So that's an atrocious story. But like, if you're not reading it hyper literally and you're approaching it with like, there is something in this story for me to get, like, then I think that you can find it there. You know what I mean?
Well, see, and that's where I'm saying like maybe going even a step further than what you're saying there, because I guess what I'm wondering is like the story is only atrocious if you read it that way,
right?
Is what I guess I'm trying to get at. Is like I don't think that those stories are atrocious. I don't think that they are. I don't know. I hesitate to say that.
Yeah, I mean, to me, see, that's where for me we get into this whole idea of like, but how much of that is just us trying to? Because like, in a way, sometimes I think about that, and then I'm like, well, if that's not the point that they were trying to get across, then they're not very good writers. Like,
or maybe we're just not good enough readers.
I don't know.
And that's where I'm at with it. That's the tension. Is like.
See, to me, and this is probably just the skeptic in me, but that's once we get to that level, that's where I'm like, I feel like we're just trying to read stuff into it now. Like, I'm always teetering on this. Like, I'm not just like I'm too much of a natural skeptic to just be like, I don't know, to just let go of that. Like it always in a lot of those situations, especially when we're really pushing the envelope on some of that stuff. Like it really does feel like to me like. Nah, I mean, we're just trying to like make the puzzle pieces fit there. Like, and I'm not saying that we are. I'm just saying that sometimes that's how it feels to me.
Yeah, I don't think that that's what we're doing with that. I mean, I think that there are ways of doing that.
Right.
But I think it depends on how we do that. I think it depends on how we read it.
Yeah.
Because like. So, like, I think that there's some ways in which, like, it depends on what, like, we don't want to reduce the story down to just this one thing. Like it's really easy to read, like, the story of Joseph, for example. Like, you can read that story of Joseph and be like, oh, yeah, well, Joseph is a type of Christ.
Right.
Bing, bang, boom. Know what that one's about. Done.
Right.
Well, we can't reduce it down to that. You know, so I think that there are some ways in which it's not even though it's technically right to say that that Joseph is a prefigurement of Christ, there's also much more to be said there than just that. So
I agree.
yeah. So I guess I'm just saying, like, I do think that there are times in which maybe it might seem like we're just making stuff up, but I think more than that, I think sometimes we just too easily dismiss it because we think we know.
Yeah, I can see that, and I sort of think, I don't know. Now that you're saying all that, I sort of feel like maybe we were on different mind waves with the whole thing, really, because I think that I'm okay with all of that. Like, I think what I don't want to do is swing too far the other direction to where I'm like, no, this story's hard to swallow, so I'm just going to be like, that's not what that writer meant. He didn't mean that. Like, no, maybe he did. That doesn't mean that that's the truth, and it doesn't mean that's the only truth. Like, there's countless good interpretations of that story. Maybe the writer meant what he wrote, though. Possibly.
Maybe.
You know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm saying. I don't want to swing too far the other direction to be like, nah, he didn't mean that. Like, he said that God desired to kill this person, but that's not what he meant. He actually meant the opposite of that. Well, I don't know. Maybe the original author really did think that.
Maybe, but then you get into the whole issue of how much does what do we mean when we say it's inspired then?
Right.
Because, we could say that, like, and I'm not denying a human element to it.
Right.
I'm not saying that at all. But what I am saying is that there's not just a human element to it, but I do believe that there's a divine element to the scriptures as well, as far as, like, the way that, like, they were inspired by the Spirit, by God. The authors were inspired to write what they wrote, I think. And so I don't think that it's always just a matter of, well, this human author wrote this and maybe they were just wrong. I think it's not, to me, it's not as easy to just kind of, to say that, I guess. It's harder for me to, it's more complex than that for me.
I don't have a problem with it. I mean, that's just the difference between me and you. Like, I don't have a problem with that. To me, the inspiration has I don't want to say nothing, has very little to do with the words on the page. It's all about the Spirit behind the words. And it doesn't matter, like, if I don't have to know what the original author is intent, I don't know. I need to know where his mind was. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing to know. I think it's a good thing to try. Like, that's part of studying scriptures, is to try to get to the mind frame of what did he mean when he wrote this. But ultimately, again, going back to there's multiple interpretations, and it's just as applicable to somebody 2,000 years ago as it is to me. But we could get me and you could read the same thing and get two totally different meanings out of it, and they both be good, valid. That's the inspiration. It's when the Spirit within me connects to the Spirit but underneath the words, and we get that divine revelation, that divine interpretation out of it. To me, that's what it means to be inspired. I don't really care too much what the original guy meant.
See, for me, it's both. For me, I think it is a matter of the scriptures themselves being inspired and us needing an inspired reading of them. I think it's both for me.
I mean, I think it is both, but, like, I mean, again, like, I think it's all about the Spirit behind the word. I think without the Spirit in the words, they're just words on a page. It's just a book. It's just words. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter. It's all, to me, about that Spirit that's behind them. So, like, I don't know.
Yeah, I guess I'm just saying, like, the reason that there are words on the page in the first place is because the Spirit inspired these authors.
See, I don't know. Maybe. I mean, I'm not saying he didn't inspire the authors, I guess. I'm just saying that I don't know. I don't know that I think that God, I don't know that he's constrained to the words on the page, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Well, I'm not saying that either.
I know, but I guess we just have a different view of it. You know what I mean? Like, a different.
Kind of seems like we're saying the same thing and disagreeing about it somehow.
Yeah, somehow.
But, which wouldn't be the first time we've done that.
No, not at all. Well, that's one thing that we've learned through this whole thing, is that language it's a difficult thing, man. It's especially trying to put language to some of these things that we don't have language for, really.
Yeah.
But yeah,
anyway.
And ultimately, I mean, ultimately it doesn't matter. I'm on the same page with you as far as, like, trying not to, I mean, for me personally, in my going down that trail of what you were talking about doing, like you're right. I have recently kind of been going through that same thing, maybe not in the same way or on the same topic, but like, because for me, and the people who's watched our most recent episodes will know, like, that one of the things that I've really been wrestling with and thinking through a lot has a lot to do with the incarnation. And I just so happen to be in the course at Global Grace Seminary, the incarnational theology is the course that I'm in. And so like, I'm listening to the lectures and I've been reading the books, right? And like, I've noticed now that because I've went back, like it's taken me too long to complete this class, way too long. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to sit down and write I'm going to phone it in. I'm a good enough writer. I can pull this off. I'm just going to do it. Like, so I sat down to write the essay. And then once I started writing, like I realized like I did kind of like, there was something within me that I guess through reading the stuff and listening to the stuff, even though I felt like I wasn't getting it, something was there just from reading it. And then I would go back in my Kindle and like look at the highlighted sections from the required reading that I had highlighted and some of the notes I had made. And like, I don't even know why I highlighted that, but like, when I saw it, I knew what it was trying to tell me. You know what I mean? Like, it was like, at the time I did it, I couldn't even have told you why I did that, but now I know why. Like, it's it's a really weird thing. Yeah. But I also realized, like, I went back and started reading On the Incarnation again by Athanasius because I wasn't in the right head frame when I read it the first time. And like, I mean, I got some good stuff out of it, but there was a lot of it. I was just like, I wasn't ready to hear it at the time. Like I wasn't in the right mind frame to hear it. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
And so I wasn't getting what I needed to. And so I started, it's a short book. I was like, I'll just go back and read it again. It won't take me very long. So I started reading it again and like now it's clicking for me a little bit more. I mean, and that's not to say that, now we're going on all kinds of rabbit holes because this is also something that I've been thinking about lately is how like we have a tendency to do, it's all or nothing, or at least I don't want to say me. It's a lot of all or nothing, like especially like with On the Incarnation Athanasius. There's so much good stuff in that. Obviously, he's a saint. I mean, right. Obviously, like ask any sort of theologian, like what's a foundational incarnational text on the Incarnation by Athanasius. Like so obviously there's good stuff in there, but there's some of the stuff in there that just doesn't work for me. It doesn't resonate with me. That's probably more on me than him, obviously, because I'm not a saint, but. It's some of the arguments to me are just, whatever. I think the same thing with Torrance. Like I'm reading Incarnation by T.F. Torrance, and there's so much good stuff in it. So like I could probably read that book 10 times and still not even half understand what he's trying to say. So much good stuff in there. There's some stuff's not that good. Like some of it to me is just not compelling, not convincing. Like I've made a couple notes where like, this doesn't work for me. Like, but I'm trying to not be so all or nothing about it to where like, oh, there's 75% of this stuff is rocking my world, but like I'm just going to not pay attention because there's sentences here or there that I'm like, doesn't.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that's something that I'm noticing that I'm trying to work on myself. It's just like to not automatically put my blinders on because there's something that I come across that just doesn't resonate with me or something that doesn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I know exactly what you mean. That's kind of what I mean by like the things that I've been kind of thinking about also, and I've already said it. I don't need to repeat all of it. But yeah, just the same kind of thing that what you're talking about, but just in different areas.
Yeah.
Different aspects of it. Just being open to not being so closed off or whatever.
And it's sort of common sense, really, because we've talked about it a million times about how, like, you're not ever going to fully agree. Me and you don't even fully agree on stuff. Right. Like, you're not ever going to fully agree with everything that somebody is saying. But that doesn't mean that you should just shut down and like, well, this person has no idea what they're talking about. Or like, you know what I mean? Like, don't miss the good stuff because you heard one thing, especially considering like, I'm trying to be humble enough to know, like when I'm reading Athanasius, it's probably more me than him. You know what I mean? Like when I'm reading T.F. Torrance, it's probably just on me. Like it's probably just my failure to understand. But so just because something doesn't resonate with me, like, But that's also not me saying like I'm just going to pretend to like it all either or understand it all or like he said it so it must be true. Like no, it's got to like I'm real enough and that it's got to make sense to me or I'm not just going to parrot it. You know what I mean? But
yeah,
I'm not going to throw it away either.
Yeah, well, and like you said before, like you weren't. There are certain times, like I know for myself, there's been times whenever I've just read right over something or was listening to something and like went back to it later and like I just wasn't in the right space to hear it or to read it to get it, you know. And then, you know, you come back to it and it clicks and it rocks your world, you know. Sometimes it doesn't. But
yeah, I don't know. That was one of the lessons that I'd messaged you yesterday that I'd got from starting that incarnational essay was just like, even when it doesn't, when it's not clicking, just keep reading, man. Keep going because who knows? You might come back to it just like I did. You know what I mean? It might come back, or it's twofold because you might come back to it and be like, oh, or you're actually soaking stuff. It's like a little kid. We talked about it with Finn on this very podcast before about how he's like little kids just soak stuff up, man. They don't even understand. They don't understand, have no understanding, but they're soaking it in. And a personality is developing and that stuff is taking root down within them and shaping them into the person that they are. And they don't even understand it. Like because you don't understand something doesn't mean that it's not shaping who you are and it's not taking root within you. You know what I mean? So like,
yeah.
I'm going to keep reading, even if I don't, like, I'm going to keep reading the Athanasius, even if I don't understand it. Like,
yeah, you know what? You can go down all kind of different avenues with that line of thinking, though. As far as, like, taking things in and not even realizing how they're affecting you.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we could go all kinds of ways with that.
We probably will, actually, considering the topic that we had set out for today. I'm sure that we'll hit on that at some point.
So what are we supposed to be talking about today?
Well, we didn't really like have an overarching topic. The one thing that we'd laid out that we wanted to talk about, which is going to lead us into a big long conversation anyway, was the Reverend Budde and her prayer, like homily or whatever it was that she gave at Trump's inauguration thing, and then some of the comments and backlash to that, and just maybe we'll see where that takes us, I guess, because I think that there's a lot of different directions we can go with that. I have a lot of feels about. I'm up in my feels about it a little bit.
Yeah. So we tried to talk about this last time we recorded.
Yeah.
And that recording did not
we had
work.
Technical difficulties.
And I'm hoping that this one works.
Yes.
But so it's maybe a little bit old news at this point.
Yeah.
But it's still something that's important enough that I think we both want to talk about it.
Yeah, for sure. It's something that I've read quite a little bit about. I've listened to some other people talk about, and it is one of those things for me that is, I think it sort of is a kind of a precipice of like this is a perfect example of like why I feel the way I feel, and like, you know, the whole, we've mentioned it before on here about like sometimes feeling like, how does nobody else see this? Am I taking crazy pills of like,
yeah,
this is the perfect example for that. And so like, that's why to me, it feels like something that's worth talking about. And it's almost probably a good thing that it's old news, because like a lot of the knee jerk that I would have had has been removed out. Like I've had time to process that and think through some of it. And like, so a lot of that knee jerk reaction I'm not going to have that I would maybe normally have.
Right. I agree.
So
same. Yeah. I was pretty upset when I first heard what she said, and then the reaction to her, to what she said, because it was just so, I mean, it was pretty benign. I mean, that's the word that's coming to mind, but like, I mean, it was good. Yeah. It was, I mean, she was straight up given the words of Jesus, you know, like, I mean, but she didn't say anything like really crazy, you know, like based on the reaction by some of the folks, you would think that like she just like went off, like she went full liberal,
right?
Like super left wing, like extreme. Like you would think that what she said would have been way more politically charged than, and like she wasn't saying, like you would based on some of the things that people said about her, you would think that like she didn't say anything that's scriptural related whatsoever.
Right.
Just some liberal talking points.
Right.
Yeah, but that's not what happened.
Yeah.
It's not even close to what happened.
I mean, that's sort of that's what frustrated me the most. And really I guess we'll just get right into it, really, because a lot of what has been my frustration, not just within the church, but within like the political sphere, is that I've seen this and I've tried to say this, but it never comes across. Like, for whatever reason, I feel like people don't understand what I'm trying to say, but like a lot of it's not that I only criticize Trump. Like, I've criticized anybody. Like, I'll criticize any politician. I don't give a darn what political party they're in, right? Like, the first time Obama ran, I voted for him. He went. The second time, guess what? I didn't, because I didn't feel like he was doing a good job.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I didn't vote for Joe Biden. I just didn't. I didn't vote for Kamala Harris. Like,
yeah.
I also didn't vote for Trump. Like, so I'm not, I don't care what political party they are, but like I felt for a long time, and it's gotten worse and worse and worse to where it feels like it's reached like the precipice with Trump, to where like, I mean, he said once, I don't remember the exact quote, but like, well, I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and I could get away with it and like, it feels like that's true. Like, it feels like he could literally say or do anything. And anybody who even indicates that they may possibly be counter to something that he says is just reviled, because that's how it felt with this Reverend Budde to me. Because she never attacked him. She never said like, this is what you need, this is the way you need to govern, this is the way you need to do things. She literally said, there are people in this country that are scared. And that's just, it's reality. I know that because I've posted on my own personal Facebook that I'm scared for the future. Like, and I'm a straight white Christian man. Like, if anybody shouldn't be scared, it's me, but like, I'm scared for the future that I'm leaving for my son. Okay. So like, I'm scared. So I know some of these other people are scared. That's just a reality. She stated a reality, and then she prayed to have mercy on them. She didn't say, not like specifically, she mentioned LGBTQ people. She didn't say any sort of specific policies that you should have towards them. She literally just said to have mercy. She mentioned immigrants and foreigners. She didn't tell him any sort of specific immigration policies or deportation policies that he should implement. The only thing that she said was that, please just have mercy on these people.
Right.
And yet that drew vitriol and backlash from Trump himself. Even posted out, like, lashed out at her and called her mean, and other people were calling her like some, I read something today where some person was calling her like some angry leftist feminist witch or something. And it's like, to me, that's the culmination of this whole, like, you're either for us or against us. And if you even hint like you may not fully agree with Trump, then you're an evil, disgusting demon person. And that's what I've been saying for the longest time. Like, even if you're somebody who supports Trump or doesn't, like, I don't care, but I feel like that danger of, you're not even allowed to question. You're literally not even allowed to say, like, I recognize that you've ran your whole thing was about send these people back and deport them. Like, I realize that's you can't even deny that. Like, just have mercy on them. If you can't even say have mercy, then what can you say? Like, that to...
Right. Since when is a call to mercy some sort of like liberal talking points?
Yeah.
Like, that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about a call to mercy. That's all she said. To your point, there was no, like, this policy, that policy, this is what you need to do about it. She simply requested that he have mercy. That's it. And I don't have all the comments handy, but man, so you know what? I'm kind of glad. They're not worth reading.
Yeah,
some of the things that were said about her are absolutely horrendous by Christians, like popular Christians, like people that we could say their names and people would know who we're talking about.
Yep.
And they said things about her that were so unchristian that it's embarrassing.
Yeah.
And it really just, it shows the very thing that we've been talking about for a while now, that sort of like marrying of your, not even a marrying, it's an abandoning. It's an abandoning the true Christian values.
Right. I mean, that's you're right. You really are. You hit the nose on the head, or you hit the nail on the head with that one, or hit it right on the nose, whatever you want to say. But because like one thing that we should all be able to say as Christians is it's undeniable that there is a limitless amount of interpretations or understandings. There's thousands of Christian denominations.
Right.
We don't agree. We just don't agree. So if you're trying to find like all Christians, like foundational core tenets that all Christians believe or all Christians stand on, you're going to have a hard time with that because there's such a wide spectrum of beliefs and variations. One of the very few things that, in my opinion, that all, regardless of your Christian denomination, that should be utterly clear that we should all be able to come into agreement on is that a foundational teaching of Jesus is mercy, particularly for the downtrodden.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, like if you have abandoned that and replaced that instead with like talk of the sin of empathy, to me, that's abandoning Christianity. Like, I don't know any other way to say that. Like, what is more core to Jesus than that?
Right. Yeah.
I don't understand. I cannot understand. Like, it really, I've said this before, but there's been times, especially throughout some of my deconstruction, where I'd been in various different churches sitting thinking like, man, I don't even know this person that they're talking, like this Jesus. Like, I literally, we're using the same name in the same book and it could be a completely different God. And like, this is one of those examples to where it feels that way.
Yeah.
To where like we call our God Jesus, we use the same holy scriptures. I don't know your Jesus though. And I don't want to be frank about it. Like if that's who, like,
yeah,
it's like we got two totally different gods we're worshiping. I don't know. Like it
really is insane to think about what she actually said versus what was heard. I don't even have like the words for it. It really is that like mind blowing.
Yeah.
Like what she said versus what the folks who attacked her must have heard. And I really don't even know what to say about it.
Well, and I think just to go back to a little bit of what I've already said, but that's sort of what is so frustrating with me about trying to have these conversations with people is like a lot of times in the political spectrum, as a Christian who doesn't see Trump as a very good Christian candidate, quite frankly, he doesn't align, the things that he stands for doesn't align with my view of Christianity very well. Point blank. Everybody watching this knows that already if they've watched anything by us in the past.
Right.
You know what I mean? But like a lot of times if you'll bring up some of those things to somebody who is a Christian that does support Trump and who likes Trump, a lot of the times what they'll say is, like, well, yeah, I agree. He maybe isn't the best Christian example, but like, I'm not electing a pastor. I'm electing a leader and I think he's going to be a better leader and blah, blah, blah. And like, they say that, but then wholeheartedly support him regardless of whatever he says. Like, you can't even criticize, like,
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, if you can still think that Trump was the better candidate. You can still support him and be like, nah, he probably shouldn't have came out and lashed out at that bishop. Like, she was right on that one. That doesn't mean that you don't like him just because you said on this one thing, like, he might have missed the boat on that one. She was maybe right on that. But like, you can't do that. And that's why I get so frustrated. It's like, it makes me feel crazy. Because again, that's the common trope that you'll get when you bring up some of his moral failures and some of the places where he doesn't seem like a very good Christian. That's what they'll say is like, well, I don't necessarily support everything he does or says, but I think, but then they support everything he does or says. It's mind blowing to me, man. It's so frustrating.
Yeah, certain Christians in particular will do that for sure. I do think that there's probably some who would agree I think surely there's folks out there that support Trump that would agree with what we're saying.
Yeah, I mean,
on this point,
and I'm not even trying to say that that's real. I'm literally giving you my, like, this is what it feels like to be me.
right?
This that doesn't even necessarily mean it's reality, but I'm trying to explain to you how it feels to me. It feels like I'm taking crazy pills.
Yeah, and I'm with you on that as far as that goes. Yeah, I don't know what to make of that. I don't know how someone can say something. And I mean, parts of what she said were, and not direct quotes, but using some of the same language as Micah 6:8.
Yep.
You know, where it says, "I've told you, O man, what is good, to do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with God." Like, she didn't quote it exactly, but some of that language was in there. And, you know, I mean, Jesus says, "Be merciful as your Father is merciful." To be perfect as your Father is perfect, and that includes loving your enemies.
Right.
You know, he says that in the context of loving your enemies. If you want to be perfect as your Father's perfect, love your enemies.
I mean, that's the, it's the same thing as like what I get, because if I ever post anything about like LGBTQ people, because, let's talk about that for a minute, because she mentioned that specifically as one of the people, that she prayed for mercy for, you know what I mean? Right. And like a lot of times that's what I'll get when I'll say, like when I'll make a post about it, it's a lot, there'll be a ton of comments of like, yeah, I agree. We should love those people. We should treat them with respect. We just hate the sin. You can't accept the sin, hate the sin, but love the sinner. But then, like, this lady is praying, okay, well, like, I'm praying for mercy for these people. And, like, no, heck with that. We're not going to have mercy on those people. It's like, are you, right. So are you just paying me lip service whenever I make a post about accepting LGBTQ people? And you say, no, we should definitely treat them right and we should love them. We just can't, we hate the sin, but are you just giving me lip service or do you actually mean it?
Right.
Because she's not telling you to accept it. She's not telling you anything. She's literally saying, please just have mercy on these people. And if you can't have mercy on them, then you don't love them.
Right. Yeah. I mean, amen. I don't know what else to say about that, honestly. It's just, I mean, maybe we should have pulled up what she actually said.
Yeah, I thought about that, but then I felt like at this point, because it's been a week since the whole thing happened. Everybody else has already talked about it. Like, surely people know by now. If you don't know, look it up. Don't take our word for it. Like, we looked it up, read the whole transcript, listened to parts of it. I didn't listen to the whole thing. I read the whole thing, everything that she said, but I did listen to some of it.
I actually did listen to the whole thing. It wasn't very long.
It was like 15 minutes, I think, probably.
Yeah. Because I was really curious. I wanted to know, like, maybe she said something before this that was like really crazy. Like there's got to be something other than this little clip here that I'm seeing that is causing this sort of reaction. No, like if there was any sort of controversial bit, it was the part that got cut out and shown to everybody. But even that was not. I understand she brought up immigrants, LGBTQ.
Yes.
So, like, automatically those will set off people's, like, trigger warnings.
Yes.
But, I mean, she just said have mercy.
Right.
That's it.
Well, it's literally what I just said, though. Like, that's the whole lip service that you always get. It's like, even if you disagree and you think it's sin to be LGBTQ or whatever, like, those same people will still tell you, yeah, but you got to love the people. You just hate the sin. Well, like, okay, does that not include having mercy on them? Like, you think we should be unmerciful towards them or not?
Right.
I don't.
Yeah.
It's hard, man. That's where that really hits. To me, again, it's a perfect example of some of the conversations I've had with you, probably off camera more than on camera, about some of the struggle that I've had with even being, like, considering myself as part of church culture and consider even using the label Christian because it feels sometimes like I'm a completely different religion than like what is being espoused as modern Christianity. In that regard, I believe in Jesus. I believe in God the Father. But
right.
I don't know, like that. That's the perfect example of why I struggle with that, though.
Yeah, it's so it's one of those things where like we have to. You don't want to downplay the seriousness of the state of the church in America and where we're at right now. So you don't want to do that, but you also have to keep in perspective that we're talking about 2025 America.
Mm-hmm.
The church is way bigger than that. The church has been around way before us and will go on way after us. Will the version of Christianity that we know in America, will it die eventually? Probably.
I think so.
You know? And
based on the road that we're headed, I think so personally, but
I mean, the same could be said about any point in history. You point back at some point in history and you think there was probably certain versions of Christianity floating around that we don't even know about. They died out.
Yep.
You know, they didn't stand the test of time. And I think this whole MAGA Christianity stuff, that's what that's going to be. It's going to die.
Yeah, I think so.
And the only thing that will sustain is I think those creeds, those early creeds, like the faith once delivered, right? According to the scriptures, like the faith once delivered, from the apostles, the ones that walked with Jesus and lived with him, and that message that will continue on.
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus said himself that the gates of hell will not prevail. You know,
right?
That
it's funny that you're the one that mentioned this, because I actually knew that we were going to talk about this on the conversation, but I was 100% sure that it was going to be me that said it, and I was afraid that you would disagree with me on it.
On what?
Well, because the way the framing of it in my head was like, I think that the trajectory that we're on in this example that we're talking about with this Bishop Budde is the perfect example of it. Like, I think it's the death of American Christianity, at least evangelical Christianity. Like, it is on a trajectory of death.
A certain version of it, I agree with.
And but I agree with you. Like, the way that you framed it is what I mean by that.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that I would be able to get that across to you. So it's better that you,
right?
It's better that it came from you and not me, anyway. But that's what I meant by it. But yeah, I think I think that trajectory that we're on, as evidenced by this example, like that version of American evangelicalism it's on its dying. Like, this is the end for it. Like, it's gonna die.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't see how it can survive without these basic tenets of Jesus' teaching being
right,
core to it, central to it. Whenever you're rejecting the words of Jesus as liberal talking points,
woke, you got to throw that word in there.
Woke, like, whenever the Sermon on the Mount is dismissed as woke, then you don't have a foundation to stand on. It's gonna blow away.
Right. Well, and that's what
I burn up like chaff.
And that's exactly what I mean by when I say that. Like, if you actually think that Jesus is the truth, the way, the truth, and the life, well, like, to me, from my perspective, the trajectory that we're headed on as the American Evangelical Church is the opposite of Jesus. And so if you think that Jesus is the way, the truth, or the life, then we're headed the way of destruction. That only leads to death. So that's why I come to that conclusion that we're headed on the course to death, because we're not following the narrow way. We're not following the way.
It doesn't seem like it.
To me, obviously.
At least a certain portion of us.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I've really been trying to think through this a lot. And really what I've been trying to think through is how, because it seems so, like, I cannot emphasize enough how upside down it seems to me. It is literally like a lot of these things, like lashing out at someone and calling them the anti-gospel and proclaiming the anti-gospel for asking for mercy for people who are scared. That is so contrary and so opposite to the Jesus that I know and the gospel that I know and the Christ that I know, that like I've really had to spend a lot of time just thinking like, how in the did we even get here? Like, how did this happen? Like,
right.
I'm literally speechless at times, just flabbergasted at how crazy this is. And as I was thinking through it today, I read the word, I told you this, but the word that came to my mind was Babylon. And I was like, well, that's interesting. But what's interesting, first of all, because that doesn't happen to me very often, where I'm like, seem to get like a word. I even kind of hesitate to say it that way because it sounds so churchy, and that's not me at all. But like, that's literally what it felt like. Like I was just sitting there thinking, and all of a sudden the word Babylon just popped in my mind. And I was like, that's weird. So I looked it up. I was sitting at my computer at work, so I just pulled up, the internet and Googled it, and was just reading some stuff on Babylon. And it's pretty interesting how like the word Babylon in the Hebrew, it means confusion.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, the way that I just described how everything seems so upside down, confusion seems to be an applicable word for that.
Yeah.
And like, if you look at the role that Babylon played throughout the history of the Bible, like, you know that it's the second most mentioned city in the Bible behind only Jerusalem.
I didn't know that.
And it's got it's from Genesis all the way to Revelation. It's throughout the whole thing. And
yeah.
It means confusion, but one of the things that, like, a central part that they played in the story is, like, exile, right? Because that exile is a huge part of the story of the children of Israel. So, like, at one point, they were exiled to Babylon, and that was part of their story, was, like, that they integrated into that Babylonian society and started identifying with Babylonians and started intermarrying with Babylon and starting their families in Babylon, and like sort of lost that identity as the chosen children of God because of their just acceptance of this confusion about who they actually are. And that's a central part to the story of the children of Israel. And like I said, I don't remember the exact wording I phrased it to you, but it was kind of crazy because I said something about it seems like perhaps, possibly, if you look at the church, the modern day church, as a sort of a figure of the children of Israel of the day, like, maybe we've been taken exile by Babylon, by confusion. Maybe we're confused about who we are. Everything's so upside down that we've lost our true identity. And the way that I phrased it to you was perhaps we've become drunk on the wine of Babylon, the wine of power and domination and controlling others, because that seems to be a lot of this whole Christian nationalism thing. Is like ruling over others and like making sure that my way, the way that I see it, is the one that prevails above everybody else's. Well, then the next verse that I looked up, because I looked up Babylon and was just reading through some of the verses. The next one I read was Revelation 17, which is the one I sent to you, where it says that the rulers had become drunk on the wine of the woman. Let's just use that word. That's not the word in Revelation, but the woman, and she had a name written on her forehead, and that name, Babylon.
Yeah.
So it really does feel like that. Like, I feel like that a large portion of the Christian church, the American evangelical church, has lost its identity. It's replaced this identity of, like, because Jesus said outright, he said, they will know you're my disciples by your love,
right,
your love for one another.
Yeah.
And he specifically taught to love your neighbor and your enemies as yourself. Like, that's how they know you're his disciples. So whenever calling for mercy and love for people has been replaced and has been called the sin of empathy,
right,
you've lost your identity. In my opinion, in my humble opinion, you've lost your identity.
Right.
You've forgotten who you were. They will know you're Jesus' disciples by your love. Can they tell whose disciple you are? By the things that you say, by the posts that you make on Facebook. Is it exuding love? Like when you're calling a bishop who prayed for mercy to people a demonic feminist witch, is that exuding love for that woman?
Right.
If we're chanting lock them up, send them back, is that exuding love? Can we look at you and be like, that's Jesus' disciple because look how much love he's got.
Right.
We've lost our identity.
Yeah. And then part of me also wants to make sure and say that someone could take that same analogy and use that to speak about the more progressive Christian side also. And so I do want to at least acknowledge, even though I agree with everything you're saying,
Right.
I do want to at least acknowledge that there is a danger of losing your way on the opposite side of this too.
Absolutely.
So it is something that you have to
There's a danger,
maintain.
and it's good to say that. My perspective and where I'm coming from is this is the prevailing narrative. These are the people that are in power. Trump is the president.
Right. Yeah.
This is the narrative that is being espoused out there by the church, the evangelical church at large. And that's why that's why I'm taking this stance on it. But yeah, to your point, it could be the opposite way too. Like regardless, if someone can't look at the words you say and the way you're living your life and say, that guy's definitely a disciple of Jesus because look at the love.
Right.
Then you've lost your identity.
Yeah.
Because that's the one thing that Jesus said, the way that they'll know you're my disciples. It ain't about the way you dress, the way you cut your hair, the way the language that you use. It ain't about none of that. It's about how you love people, period.
Yeah. There's also an interesting thing that happens in this world of the more, I don't even know how to say it, because I don't even saying American evangelicalism I don't think is too broad. I think it's even,
You're right.
There's even a subset of that is really what I'm kind of talking about. And it's like the folks that like would say, they wouldn't say this, but what they mean, I think, is like they'll know that we're his disciples by how much we're hated for being bullies. You know,
That's not what Jesus said.
right? But it's like there's a certain subset.
I want to read that. So go ahead, man. I'm going to look that one up. I'm going to read it.
There's a certain like subset of this culture, I think, that prides themselves on how much they're hated, because in their minds, they think that means that they're on the right path. That means that they're doing something right if they're being hated. Which, to their point, Jesus did say that the world would hate you the way it hated me. But you have to look at what Jesus did to get hated.
Right. Well, that's why.
See if that's applicable.
That's exactly why I wanted to read that, because that's. Let me just. I want to read the whole Beatitudes if I can.
Okay.
All right.
Go for it.
Matthew chapter
Fine with
5.
me.
I'm just going to start at 5:1. When Jesus saw the crowds, he went up the mountain. And after he sat down, his disciples came to him. Then he began to speak and taught them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Pay attention to this one. This is verse 7. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those, this is the whole reason why I want to read this, so pay attention to this one too, verse 10. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven, for in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. So that's where that verse falls in. What did he just say you would be persecuted for? Your meekness, for your mercy, for being a peacemaker, for being poor in spirit.
Yeah.
Those are the things that will get you hated and will get people slandering and saying bad things about you. Well, it seems to me that I remember someone that we've been recently talking about who is being reviled and all kinds of evil have been spoken against for praying for mercy.
Yeah. Yeah.
That one gets me fired up, man. Like that one, because you're right. That is one of the common things that you'll get all the time. Is like there is a population of Christians who will like, go out and protest people with their "God hates you," signs or whatever,
right.
and then when people like speak out against it, like, oh, of course we're getting persecuted. Jesus said that would happen. Like, no, he said because you're too merciful. You're too loving. That's why people will hate you. That's why people will speak out against you. It's the exact freaking opposite. Everything is so freaking upside down, man. Drives me crazy.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's all frustrating, and it's just where we're at right now. And there's not the thing is that this is all we can do, right? What we're doing right now, that's all we can do. I mean, and ultimately, this doesn't matter. People are going to listen to this, and they're either going to like what we're saying and agree. They're going to agree or disagree. And it's just going to be what it is,
Yeah.
I don't know what else we can do other than, we can pray, and we can keep spreading the good news, and we can keep trying to be a light in the darkness. We can keep doing as best we can, just do the things that Jesus actually said to do.
Right.
And that's all we can do.
That also reminds me of I seen a TikTok video 2 days ago or so, but it was a guy, he was a pastor actually delivering his message, and this TikTok was like a short little clip of his message. But if I remember correctly, the way that he phrased it was, he said that if the way you show your loves to someone makes them want to off themselves, trying to choose my words carefully because we're going on YouTube, but if the way that you love someone makes them want to off themselves, then that's not love, which seems to be a common sense thing to me. I mean, that seems pretty obvious. I don't know why I do this. I always do this. I clicked on the comments. In the very first comment was this guy just lambasting this pastor, calling him a wolf in sheep's clothes, delivering a false gospel, and he's going to burn in hell forever. He hates the church and hates God. Because he posted a clip of him saying that if you love someone and the way that you love them makes them want to off themselves, that's not true love. And which, again, goes right along with the topic that we're talking about, how upside down everything is. Because, again, Jesus said they will know you're my disciples by your love for one another. But anyway.
Right.
That's the part of it that's applicable to what you were saying was, the guy said, like, you hate the church and hate God. And the guy made a response to that comment, and he didn't address any of the other bullcrap, but he addressed that. Because that's something that I feel like a lot of people will see. It goes along with the same thing as criticizing Trump. Like, for some reason, if you say anything negative about him, they think you hate him. And it's the same with the church. Like, a lot of times if you say anything that they disagree with, you hate the church. Like, no, if I hated the church, I wouldn't be doing this podcast. Like, the fact that we continually talk about this stuff shows the exact opposite of that. I've tried to quit church. I've tried my best over and over again.
Yeah.
The fact that we're continuing to talk about this, we talk about it because we do care.
Yeah.
I'm passionate about this because I do care.
Right. Yeah. And it doesn't take but like 5 more seconds to actually think about it before you respond, to know that, like, if speaking the truth, like, you can disagree with someone's lifestyle. You can think that they're a sinner. You can think that they're on their way to hell. Mm-hmm. You can think all of that. And you can still respond to them in a way that doesn't make them want to off themselves.
Exactly.
You can still try to help them in the way that you think they need help, whatever way you think is appropriate to handle that situation, as someone who believes that that's a sin and thinks that person is, whatever it is, whatever. There is a way to handle that situation that doesn't end in someone wanting to
Right.
end their life.
Exactly.
And the fact that we can't even agree to that is insane.
It is insane. And to be fair, I don't think that that's a majority position.
Right.
But it's hard to deny that any time you find a video like that, a post like that on Facebook, a TikTok video, a YouTube video, and you click on the comments, one of the top comments you're going to see is something along those same lines every time. I don't think it's a majority position, but there's more out there than I would like to believe.
It happens more than it should.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I'm trying to say.
That's the dang show.
And I think that's the main thing, the main takeaway for me from this whole bishop thing, that I just want people to stop and think about what you're saying. Like, it's okay to disagree, but to see, well, it's okay. First, I guess where I want to go with it, it's okay. First of all, it's okay to disagree with, not everything that comes out of the president's mouth has to be gospel. Okay? It's okay. That doesn't mean you hate him. You can still support him. You can still like him. You can still think he's a good president. It's okay that occasionally he's going to say something and you'll be like, yeah, he probably missed the boat on that one. That's okay, but I still like him. Like, that, you can do that. You're allowed to do that. Okay? Like, I want to say that. And number two, just think about, like, some of the things, like, I mean, again, if you haven't seen what the bishop said, go watch it. Go look at what she said. Like, that's basic Christianity. I read the Beatitudes. Like, that's Beatitude language that she's using there, man. Like,
yeah,
that's the cornerstone of Jesus' teaching, is the Sermon on the Mount. Like, that's his magnus opus. Like,
right. And it doesn't even, going back to what we said at the very beginning, all she said was be merciful.
Exactly.
What that means to Trump and what that means to you as the person hearing it, I don't know. Like, whatever it means, that's what it means. Like, it doesn't even have to be a thing where, like, she's automatically saying, like, every policy that Trump had in place can't be implemented now.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just as simple as saying whatever mercy looks like to Trump, that's what she's asking for.
I really do think that's what people heard. Like, what she said was, there are people, that are foreign-born immigrants, maybe here legally, maybe not. Like, but regardless, they're scared, and I'm praying for mercy for them. That's what she said. But I really do think that a lot of what people heard was like, oh, she's saying that we shouldn't do anything about immigration. We should just have open borders. Well, like, that's not what she did. She literally didn't say anything about policy. She just said, have mercy on these people. Yeah. And I think that when she mentioned LGBTQ people were automatically just like, well, she's saying that we should accept LGBTQ people and just, I think that's sin and we can't do that. Like, she didn't say anything about that. She literally just said, have mercy on them. Again, it goes back to what people have said to me a million times about, like, do you actually believe that you should love those people even though you don't agree? That's what she's asking you to put into practice there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy.
I think it's crazy, man. It's just, this whole political cycle has been hard. It's been hard on me, man. It's been just based on where I'm at with my faith, in my walk. It's been, I could have done with another year maybe before this election happened.
It's one of those things that, like, for me, it's been one of those things where I've been trying to kind of, like, not pay attention to any of it.
Yeah.
But it's been hard, and the more I pay attention to it, the worse it gets. It seems like all the time there's just something new, some sort of new fire.
It really bothers me how it shouldn't be, the fact that this is a political thing that we're talking about, and it has affected the church in the way that it has. It should not be that way. Like, it shouldn't be, our religion shouldn't be so intertwined with our politics that, like, it ruins or changes in any way our religion. But, like,
yeah,
it's almost like the lines between your political affiliation and your religion have become so blurred. It seems like now that it's, and I don't understand it, man. And I don't think it bodes well. Maybe it does bode well, but not in the way that we think.
Well, there's definitely been a blurring of the lines, I think, between conservative right-wing politics and the Christian life. There's definitely been an unhealthy blurring of the lines, I think. And that's not to say that, like, people, because, you know, I can hear already folks saying, like, well, these issues aren't political issues to me. They're Christian issues because I believe that God is pro-life, and I believe God is this, and I believe God is that. And it's like, well, yeah, I mean, I hear you. But there also is a point in which I think it becomes too easy to confuse the two.
Yeah.
Where you're no longer saying, I'm a Christian, and this is what I believe as a Christian, so I'm voting for that.
Right.
It can become and I think the term there is your devotion. I think that if you spend more time on CNN or Fox News, or you spend more time reading articles on Trump and his policies and the things that he's implementing, if you know more about that than you know about your scriptures, there's a problem. If you are constantly keeping up to date on this kind of stuff, and you never go and read the Sermon on the Mount, like, when's the last time you read the Sermon on the Mount? You know, ask yourself that question.
Today.
Yes, just now you did. But, like, you know what I mean? Like, I think that a lot of us in that space, it's a devotion issue. It's a being
right.
Too devoted to your politics, but trying to play it off as if it's about your Christian.
Jesus said straight up, you can't serve two masters.
Right.
You know, whatever your heart is in, that's where your mind's going to be. Or
right.
Vice versa, even too. Like, wherever your mind's at, that's where your heart's going to be. Like, what are you thinking on? What are you?
Yeah.
Where to use your language that you were just using? What is your devotion towards? Truly, you know.
Right.
And to that point, you know, with the whole, like, well, it's not political issues to me. I want to give a practical example from my perspective on, like, the difference. Okay, because I don't think. I'm just thinking out loud here, but I don't think that there is a Christian position necessarily on, let's just say, immigration, or what we're going to do about immigration, outside of what policies should be implemented. I think, regardless of whether you want to be more strict on immigration or more lenient on immigration, what makes it a Christian issue is that mercy aspect to it. I think you can enforce more strict immigration rules and do it in a humane and merciful way.
Right.
To me, that is what makes it Christian. It's not whether you were pro open borders or against them. It's regardless of that, there's no Christian position on that, in my opinion. It's how do we treat those people, though? Again, remember, Jesus said, they will know you're my disciples by your love. How do you treat those people?
Right.
Are we treating them like dirt? Throwing them in cages? Treating them like animals? Or, like, are we trying our best to, like, be respectful and treat them humanly, even though they broke the law? So we're going to have to deport them back or whatever they're doing.
Right.
But that doesn't mean we have to be inhumane to them. To me, that's what makes it a Christian. You know what I mean? And, like, that's what gets lost. It's become, instead of that, which should be a common meeting place that the right and left can meet on as Christians, right-leaning Christians and left-leaning Christians, we can have different opinions on what's the proper policies for immigration, but we can come to the middle and agree that whatever is decided and whatever we do should be done out of love and respect and decency. Because that's the Christian ethic. It's not about right or left.
Right.
In my opinion. You know, my in my uneducated opinion. But
right.
But I think that we've lost that. We've made it a right or left issue instead of that common ground of love.
It's part of it is just we want to oversimplify everything. We want to make these issues more. We try to make them more simple than they really are, and they're just not. All of it's complex.
Yeah, humans are complex, man.
And it's man. What I'm thinking about now is like it's just what we. I don't know what it is about us. We long for simplicity, and we try to make everything simple, and not just politics, but like it's the same thing with what we talked about with the scriptures earlier. Like we want to not think about it.
Mm-hmm.
We want to just open it up, pick an English translation, open it up. There you go. God killed some people, I guess.
Yeah.
We want it to be that simple.
Right.
And it's just not. And God knows that what we need and what we don't need.
Right.
Like there's a reason that these things, like what would God possibly want to achieve out of making things complicated like that? Relationship, communion, possibly. We have to sit down and talk these things out. I have to find a way to this person that has an opposite view of me. I have to find a way to love them and pray for them and be in communion with them in spite of our differences.
Right.
Like there's reasons that none of this is supposed to be this simple.
Right.
And I mean, that's not the whole of it. I'm just kind of giving a little short example of it.
Right.
But like, I think God knows what he's doing,
Seems like a pretty good bet.
So, like, the reason that the scriptures are the way that they are is because we need them to be that. And we can't keep trying to make them something they're not. We have what we have for the reason, because God intended us to have them. And the same thing goes with all this other stuff, man. It's all tied in.
It's probably part of why we seem to be so upside down, and like why we like seem to not be paying it. It seems to me in a lot of ways we don't know what the scriptures say. Well, it probably is exactly what you're saying. It's because we have, I know what that means. Like I don't need to read that. Like I know what it means. Or even if we do read it, maybe you read it every day, but if you already approach it with the understanding of like, I know what this is trying to tell me, like, then you're still not getting it. You could read it a million times over, but if you don't have your mind right for it, like just exactly what we were talking about at the beginning of the episode, like, then it's no wonder why we don't know what they say, or that we're going the opposite direction of what they say.
Yeah.
It's no wonder.
And some of it really does go back to what I said at the beginning. I think too many of us are in that, and it's something that I've recognized within myself recently, that whole a willingness to be taught, to a willingness to actually, and again, it's not just a scripture thing anymore that we're talking about here.
Nope.
We're talking about, if I can't sit down with someone who has polar opposite political views as me, if I can't be willing to sit down and learn from them, to actually hear them out, not to come into the conversation assuming that I'm right, assuming that this person has nothing to teach me because I have the moral high ground.
Right.
Exactly what I was saying before about the scriptures. If you can't do that, then you're not going to learn anything. You're shutting yourself off to real communication with this person and thus real relationship. And that's not how we're supposed to live.
Right. It's one of my favorite Ram Dass quotes. He says that everyone's the guru if you've got the ears to hear them.
Right.
It's basically like everybody's got a lesson to teach you if you can hear what they've got to say. Like,
it's why we just shut down whenever we hear any of these like trigger words, these things that these tells that tell you that this person's on the other team, and then you just shut down, and there's no way to live.
There's no growth there. That's for sure.
Yeah.
As part of it too, I also think this made something that you said a while ago made me think of this, because I had a recent example where I come across something that somebody said on Facebook, and they had said something like, this person is obviously like a Trump supporter, right leaning, like, you can tell by the stuff that they say. But one of the things they said was like something to the extent of, I just can't understand why Democrats want this. It makes no sense. But like the way that they framed it was so obviously, like where my mind went was, it's because they don't. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know anybody. Like, I know a lot of Democrats, and I don't know anybody that wants that. Like, not a single person. But it's like that I don't know if it's like our own biases or we take, because I think this person genuinely thought they weren't, like they genuinely thought that. You know what I mean? Like they weren't being a jerk about it. That they were really like, I can't. I'm trying to understand Democrats and I can't understand why they would want this. And it's like, well, that's not what they want at all. Like,
right.
It's like we're not listening to people, and I think that a lot of times we just think that we know more than we really do about what other people want. And myself, like a lot of the stuff I say is preaching at myself. Let me get that out. You know what I mean? Like I know that about myself, so it applies to me too. But that's why we're not the ones to judge, man. Because unless you're omnipotent and omnipresent and omniscient, then you're not in a position to judge, because you've never walked in anybody else's shoes, man. Like, you don't know what's going on in people's minds. You don't know why they think the way that they think, and like even trying to conceptualize what they're thinking and make a judgment about this person is ignorant or this person doesn't know what they're talking about. Like, you just don't know, man. You don't know. It's not our place. That's why we're not the judge. It's why we're incapable of judging. That's why, to me, that judging is just continually eating of the same fruit that Eve did. Like it's that cycle of like, we're trying to be something that we were never intended to be. Like we were never intended to be that judge.
Right.
But
yeah, man,
that's another tangent.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even know what else to say about it.
Yeah, I mean, I said that I wasn't going to have a knee-jerk reaction, and I don't guess it was a knee-jerk, but I do get passionate about this stuff, you know, like once we get going on this stuff. But like I said, I get passionate because I care, and because because I really do feel like every time I read something, I feel like it's like another death blow that's being dealt to.
There's just so much division, and that's what I think maybe more than anything, that's what I'm grieved about. Is the division, the fact that we are so quick to make someone our enemies and then not love them.
Yes.
You know, it's one thing to have an enemy and to love your enemy. That's what, you know, Jesus said, to love your enemies. I think implied there is you will have people that you view as an enemy.
Right.
And you got to love them. But we're just so quick to make enemies out of folks and then not love them. And I was listening to a podcast today. I don't even know the guy's name. It was because it kind of automatically started playing after another one, so I don't even know who it was that said it. But he was someone who was like someone who's Jewish, and he was talking about that they aren't even allowed to pray in private, I think is what he said, which is interesting. I'd never heard that before.
I've never heard that either.
And if I'm wrong, then I'm wrong, I guess. But that's what he said. He said that they're not allowed to pray in private. So whenever you pray, like if you're going to pray in the morning or something, you'd have to go and there has to be at least 10 of you there, which is another interesting thing. And he was saying that like part of the reason for that is because if you got 10 dudes in a room, odds are you're going to disagree with 6 or 7 of them probably. You know, you're going to have a couple of them that you're like cool with.
Right.
A couple that you're like, nah, they're all right. And then some that you're like, I'd like to dick that dude actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but what that does though is that forces you to view this person as part of your community. That forces you to find a way to pray with them and for them, in spite of your differences. It forces you into this an awkward position, granted, but one that we need as human beings. We need that. We need to see those people that we disagree with or even dislike, and we need more of that. We need to force ourselves into situations where I'm going to pray for you, and I'm going to pray with you. We're going to pray together. We're going to study the scriptures together. Like, I know that was another thing he talked about, because like I know that like that they do the same thing whenever they study the scriptures in community with each other, that there's at least 10 of them that gather to read the scriptures. And there was a word for it, a particular word for it, but he even talked about having like a study partner, like one person in like particular that you study the scriptures with, and it's intentionally someone that disagrees with you. You don't even have to like them, but you intentionally pick this person to study the scriptures with so that you can challenge each other.
I love that.
I
love that so much.
And it's like, but if we can't read a comment on a Facebook page and not lose our crap, then how could we ever do that?
Right.
But we need that. And I think if we had more of that, we wouldn't have the vitriol online that we do. We wouldn't be having these sort of knee-jerk reactions all the time if we
trust me, man.
I'm that kind of community.
I'm a progressive leaning person in rural Kentucky. I'm always if I do anything in public, I'm surrounded by people that I disagree with. So
yeah, I don't know. It's too easy to form cliques. It's too easy to create echo chambers. It's too easy to, and you can do it within your own church. You can. Oh, I'm only going to talk to these people because I know that these people are safe, quote unquote, right? Like I know we agree on most of these things together, so we can. I'm gonna talk with them.
We really are, and it's not. This is not just a theological thing, but we really are just so addicted to comfort.
Yeah,
I think that's what a lot of that is. It's just that comfort, like because we all know that being pushed is a good thing. Like even for your faith, like let's bring it back to theology, like. Being pushed in your faith and being asked these hard questions and forced to wrestle with some of this stuff, we know that's good for us. We know it is. Right. It's just like exercise, like physical exercise. It's good for you to be physically pushed. Like that's how you get better and more healthy and more fit and more strong. And theologically, it's good. Like it helps you to think through why it gives you a more robust, a more fit faith, But we're just so addicted to comfort, like that we don't want that. We would rather not have to deal with those people that make me think these hard things, like because there's just this comfort about not having to go there to those uncomfortable places. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you just look at all the diversity in the world. Like, man, God, I think God knows what He's doing.
Call you crazy, but
like, why would God create this world and like there being so much diversity in culture and language and artistic expression and all these different things? There's so much diversity in the world. Like it has to be because we're supposed to find a way to be with each other, to love each other.
Yeah, I mean, if all humans are created in the image of God, right, and we make up the body of Christ, well then like the body is diverse, right?
Right.
Not just in looks, but in thought and language and philosophy and scriptural interpretations and everything. Like,
yeah. I mean, if we were all meant to be the same and all meant to, if it was a right thing that you form these cliques and these tribes and you ostracize the other and keep them at arm's length, if that was what we were supposed to be doing, then why do we have what we have? That's what I'm kind of getting at here. Like the reason that we have such diversity, I think, is because we're meant to live in community with each other and love each other in spite of those diversities or because of them.
I like it.
Anywho's
and housen.
Well, we've been going for about an hour and a half here.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, there's obviously other stuff we could talk about.
There is. I mean, I don't know how much more I want to say about it. Really, I feel like I said everything I want to say. I probably said more than I wanted to say, really. It's a hard thing to talk about, really, because you want to get the point across. I mean, here's the thing is that the prophets weren't very well liked because their message wasn't very well received. They had a message that was hard.
Yeah.
Because they saw their people were headed on the wrong path. And like that's a lot in a way, like not that I'm like calling myself an Old Testament prophet, but like in a lot of ways that's the way I feel about that. Like the topic that we talked about today is like I don't think it's going to be well received. I don't think it's going to be I don't think it's going to earn me any favors or friends with anybody. But I didn't say, and I didn't get passionate about it out of that. Like it's because I care so much, and I have this love for that. I see the path that we're on, and it's not, in my opinion, we're not headed in a good direction. We're not headed in a good path, man. We've got to do something.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to cry out to say, like, just think about this stuff, man. Like, even if you think I'm an idiot and you disagree with everything I said, just do me the favor of thinking about it. Just think about it. You can call me an idiot to my face. I don't care. I'm not going to hit you back. Probably. Maybe. Catch me on a bad day, maybe. I don't know. But no, probably I won't hit you. But just think about it. That's all I'm asking, man. Just think through it. Really, that could be the thesis of every show we do, is just think about it. Just think through it.
Yeah. I had something I was going to say and I lost it.
Sorry.
It's all good. Yeah. Oh, about the prophet thing.
Yeah.
Like, the thing about the prophets, it doesn't give you a lot of hope because no one ever listened to the prophets. All the prophets got killed, including Jesus. Whenever Jesus tried to tell them about the coming destruction of Jerusalem at the hands of Rome, he's trying to tell them to choose the path of enemy love, and they weren't having it. So he doesn't give you a whole lot of hope. The scriptures don't give you a whole lot of hope if you are someone who is trying to be that prophetic voice. And even in saying that, I don't know that, like, we're not trying to be prophets, and like even saying trying to be a prophet is kind of a weird thing. I don't think that's something you try to do. I think it's just something that happens.
Right.
But I said all that to say that prophets are important, though. And just because there's not a great track record of people listening to them doesn't mean that it's not needed. And so, like, something I was thinking about is how, like, the prophets sort of they're like bridge builders in a way. Like, if you think about, like, the prophecies, like, what they're doing is, like, this thing is coming at some point. It's almost like there's a bridge that they're building between the present and the future and the past. And, like, it's, the Old Testament and the New Testament, there's that, there's so many prophecies given in the Hebrew scriptures that are fulfilled in the New Testament. There's sort of like bridging the gap between the two. And so I think that's part, at least. I think that's at least part of what I think good prophecy should do is bridge any gaps that exist. And I think that whether you're left or right or whatever, I think that a good prophecy should bridge the gap between these extremes, I think.
I agree. I definitely don't think we should be dividing, so.
Right.
That's never my goal, although I've not always been great at it, but.
Yeah, but the only way you bridge that gap is to follow the prophet's lead, to listen to them, though. To listen to those prophetic voices. The ones, and Revelation says that the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. That's all we can do. You testifying to Jesus. And Paul talks about how prophecy is supposed to edify the church, right? So, like, if you're building up, if what you're saying is building up, and it's like helping people in the church, and it's testifying to Jesus and who Jesus is and his life and his teaching, then those are the marks of true prophecy.
Right. Man, I have to say that's one of the real struggles that I'm facing in my current life, in my current role, I guess I would call it, role within my spiritual life. It's just this whole idea of, like, I don't want to divide people. And my goal is never to tick people off and to be like, I want to exude the love And I just want to love. That's what, like, I want the very things I said in this podcast about, like, can people look at my life and just be like, that guy's definitely a disciple of Jesus because I see love all over his life. That's who I want to be. But
Right.
at the same time, I think part of that love is calling out injustices and calling out things in love. It has to be done in love, but you know what I mean? Like when but trying to find that balance, because I feel like anytime, I mean, it kind of goes back to some of the stuff I said earlier about, like, if you even like hint that you may possibly disagree with something that Trump says, it's taken in a way that, like, a lot of the people that support him, like, jump all over you. You know what I mean? And it's just like, that's not really the intent. So it's just trying to walk that path of, like, I'm trying to exude the love of Christ and walk a life of love. But at the same time, that includes standing up for the least of these and calling out injustices when I see them, but not in the spirit of division and not trying to be a jerk. I'm not trying to call people out. I'm not trying to be you know what I mean? Like, you know what I'm trying to say? It's that tension between trying to bridge that gap, but, like, not, I guess it's just because I'm a flawed human being, but not knowing the best way to always do that, you know?
Right. Well, where is it that Jesus said that, talks about it, you know, the dadgummit, the words are escaping me. When he talks about the people in the household being divided against each other because of him, right? I did not come to bring peace but a sword, right? I mean, it's not that, it's never his intention to bring division. Just like it should never be our intention to bring division. Right. But I think that if you're living a life, and if your life, and if your words and your actions and all those things are faithful to Jesus, it's probably inevitable that you're gonna bring some division. Right. It just is what it is, I guess.
It's just a hard road to walk. You know what I mean? To try to do the right thing, try to be right. Like, I want to, because I don't, even the people that I disagree with politically or theologically, like, I want to exude nothing to those people but love. But trying to know the right way to do that is a difficult path. I mean, nobody ever said it would be easy, but I'm just saying that's kind of where I'm at in my walk. You know what I mean? Right. Like, trying to know how to do that, trying to do everything I do in love. But just love doesn't always mean just like, oh, whatever you say goes. Like, I'm just going to let you, right? Yeah. You know, do whatever, because that's not loving to that other person. You know what I mean? Like, right. Part of loving the least of these is standing up for them when you see people being trampled on. But then the people trampling on them will interpret that as you not loving them. And it's like, I don't know what to do here. Like,
right. Yeah, there's no easy answers, I don't think, to any of that.
Just try my best.
Yeah. Well, and I also think that, like, something that I know that I need to make a bigger priority in my own life is prayer. Like, I think that genuinely can help in those situations to know, like, what to do, you know.
Prayer doesn't hurt.
Being steeped in prayer, you know.
Yeah.
Contemplation, all the things. And, like, the liturgies and the prayers and all that stuff, like the lectionary, like all that stuff. I think all that stuff is really important and needs to be implemented more into our daily lives than I've been doing lately, at least.
I'll tell you something that really you really can't overplay the importance of is just your mindset of things. Like, if you, and I'm talking about just little things, like if you, like, I don't necessarily even know that there's anything more to it than just your mindset, the mindset it puts you in. But, like, if you start your day with just, like, thinking on this stuff or reading, like, scripture or in prayer, it, like, completely changes your mindset for the day. Like, yeah. I know that my day is different. If I get up and I sit around for an hour drinking coffee and playing on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and whatever, compared to, like, spending that time in contemplation or studying or reading, something edifying, it sets the tone for the day, and it really does change the day. I mean, I can notice a noticeable change in my life and in my day when I prioritize that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
And I've been trying to. I've done. Actually, I need to find one of my streaks going to end because I just finished it. But I've been doing the little reading plans on the Bible app and just trying to even. Because that's another thing about what you were going back to earlier about, like, I would always start these reading plans or whatever, and then they would be these devotionals, and I'd be like, this is silly. Like, this, I don't agree with the theology and this is not even do it anymore. You know what I mean? But then, like, even if I disagree with some of it, if I've got everybody's the guru, if I've got ears to hear it, like, there's something there for me. I just got to keep reading, man. But
yeah.
Anyway, that's rambling. Now I'm just rambling.
No, you're good. Well, are we ready to wrap up, you think? Or is there... I mean, we don't have to keep talking about the Trump and Budde stuff. We can...
No, I'm done.
Budde!
Yeah, man, I don't really know what else. I haven't. It's kind of funny because I told you earlier this week that I'd kind of been on a spiritual fast, so to speak, which all I meant by that was I hadn't been listening to podcasts or watching YouTube videos or doing the stuff that I normally, like, that's pretty much what I do all day, every day. Is like when I'm at work, I'm either on a conference call in a meeting or I've got my earbud in listening to a podcast or a YouTube video. Like, I'm constantly just taking in this information, and I was just kind of taking a little break from that. And I'd listen to a couple of shows about weightlifting and health and fitness, powerlifting, just change it up a little, kind of. I was feeling a little, I needed a break. So, but that break did me good because I come back to it and I was, listening to and reading. And like I said, I started doing that essay, which has really been good so far. I'm not very far into it, but it's helped me a lot. So,
yeah.
Other than this political stuff, I feel good. I feel like I'm in a good place personally.
Yeah, I feel like I'm in a pretty good place overall. Personally.
Now I might wake up tomorrow and be completely different, but
yeah,
who knows?
And it's all good. Even when it doesn't feel good.
Exactly.
It's all good.
I do believe that. Even though when I'm going through those hard times, I might not believe it. But
yeah.
Lord, I believe, help me with my unbelief.
Yeah. I heard Chris Green say something today. This is the weekly Chris Greenism.
We almost made it the whole time without hearing Chris Green.
But he said, someone asked him, like, if he had to distill down, like what he believes down to, like, a sentence or something. And what he said, I thought was, like, it's actually, like, really profound. But still simple. And he said, I believe that my life is a gift. And, like, that's kind of simple and almost can kind of sound a little cliche.
Right.
But I think there's actually a lot of depth to that. There's a lot encompassed in that because implicit in that is a gift giver. Right. And it's also wrapped up in that is gratitude and thankfulness and if you believe that your life is a gift, you also believe that it has purpose, right? So there's a lot wrapped into that I think it encompasses, like, if you just asking, like, what do you believe?
Right.
Like, and that's what I was kind of thinking about whenever I mentioned, like, even the bad stuff, even when it feels like things are bad, it's like, well, I believe. What do I believe? I believe that my life is a gift. I believe that God has given me this life and that God is intending good for my life and will, like, in spite of whatever I have done with my life that I wasn't supposed to, I believe that he will make all of it right and his plan for my life will be accomplished and and kind of all of that and I'm just thankful for that. I'm at a place where I'm just grateful for that, and I think that really is all kind of summed up in that one phrase. I'm just
right.
My life is a gift.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me a little bit. Portion of what you said there kind of reminded me of that old saying. I've heard some people say it about getting older. You know, some people look at their face. You know, sometimes I'm guilty of it too. I see the gray hairs in my beard and see the way that I've aged in my face and see I don't look like I used to. You know, I'm getting older. But then, like, there's a lot of people. Like, I'll be 39, right? 39. I'm almost 40. Like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of people, like, I personally know people that didn't make it to this age. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
it's a gift to age, to see yourself, like, deteriorate in a way, like, to put it morbidly. I can see my physical shell deteriorating, and, like, that is a gift because a lot of people didn't get to experience that and didn't get to see that. And, I mean, there's a lot of truth to that, you know?
That's something else I heard Chris Green talking about today. He was talking about just that very thing, like what you just said, all of that you just said there, and he brought up the point that, like, Jesus died younger than we are right now.
Yep.
You know, like, how old was MLK Jr. whenever he died?
He was probably 40s, late 40s, maybe.
Was he?
I think
I was thinking he was younger than that. But anyway,
Bob Marley, he didn't live to be our age today. Shout out, Bob Marley. Today's his birthday. He would have been 80 years old today if he was still alive. But he died before he was our age.
Yeah. So it's just crazy to think about, you know, all these. I mean, of course, Jesus, and then not putting Bob on the same level.
He's the next step down, though. I mean, he's a fantastic prophet, I would say.
Yeah, his lyrics are really good. But yeah, it is an interesting thing to think about how old we're getting.
Yeah. It really, I mean, in a way, it kind of sucks, but it only sucks when you're clinging to the way things were, to your ideals of the way things should be.
Yeah.
Things are always constantly changing, you know, so if you're clinging to this idea of, like, I have to look the way that I look today, well, tomorrow I won't. You know what I mean? Or, like, I need to be as strong tomorrow as I am today. Well, like, there's going to come a time when your strength's going to go down. Like, it's just the way it is. But I'm also going to have other experiences and other things that I didn't have. I'm going to have wisdom that I didn't have today. You know what I mean? Because experiences bring wisdom, and there's things come and things go, and that's literally the whole meaning of life. Like, not the meaning of life, but the whole lived experience is things come and things go, and there's nothing that's permanent. Impermanence is a foundational truth to life. You can't cling to the way things are, because they won't be in the way things are in this second. They won't be in the next second. They're always changing.
Right. Yeah.
So there you go. There's your little Buddhism for today. Since I already threw in Christianity, I threw in Ram Dass. Now there's you some Buddhism.
Yeah. Ram Dass, what was he?
Hindu.
Okay.
Well, he's Jewish nationally. Like, he's a Jewish by his DNA, I guess you would say, or whatever, his genetics. But he went to India, and he was a devotee to the Hindu god of Hanuman, who's the monkey god.
Oh.
Who's actually, it's pretty interesting if you look into him, because there's a lot of crossovers there between him and Jesus, as far as, like, the same kind of principles and story and, like, the things that they, which is kind of interesting, because I've told you before that, like, in reading what Ram Dass said about his guru, he said that he went to India to learn under this Hindu guru, and the only thing he ever talked about was Christ. Well, like,
yeah,
Hanuman was the god of service. Like, his whole life was supposed to be. That's what the name Ram Dass means, is God's servant. Like, so anyway,
interesting.
There you go. There's your little Hindu knowledge for today. What else do you need to know? You need a little Norse?
I'm good. Well, we ready to wrap up?
Here's your little Norse. You know that Loki had a child that was a horse, and he had a child that was a wolf.
I didn't know any of that.
Yeah, you see, he was a shapeshifter. And so in order to save the giants at one point, he had to, his great plan was to shapeshift into a horse so that the male horse would be distracted And so then the male horse impregnated Loki, and he gave birth to a baby horse. So there you go. He has a horse offspring. That's a true story, man. I mean, I don't know what's the truth. That's truly what the story says.
Yeah. It's weird.
It is weird.
It's weird stuff.
But it was the Giants. The Giants were. There was a giant who was going to build a wall around Asgard, and like the bet was if he got it done in a certain amount of time, he got to take one of the goddesses as his wife. But he was actually going to get it done in time because he had this supernatural horse that was able to carry all the big rocks for him. So then the only way that this goddess wasn't going to be given to this giant in this wager was somehow the horse had to be taken out of the equation. So Loki, in true sacrificial form, sacrificed his body.
Yeah. That's a story.
There you go.
Interesting. Yeah. You know what? I probably will just not ever look into any of the Norse stuff.
There's a lot of good stories there.
Some of it all just sounds weird.
Well, I mean, your source is me.
Yeah. But I mean, all of it's kind of weird in its own way, right?
Yeah. The Trinity?
Yeah.
Come on.
It's kind of weird. It's not quite as weird to me as that story, but maybe it's just me.
It's just a hard one to explain. That's to me, the Trinity is always the one that comes up when it's like, yeah, I mean, good luck explaining that one.
Right.
We try our best, but
yeah, you inevitably end up some sort of saying some sort of heresy. I'm sure.
Only because of our failure to articulate anything that, like, it's just not even intentionally. Like, it's just because we're doing our best, and that's the best we can do.
Yeah.
Because we're trying to talk about things above our pay grade.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Well, no, we really are rambling at this point, huh?
I mean, you know how many different religions we've covered in this podcast?
Covered a lot.
About all of them, I know, really.
I'm sure there's more. Baha'i.
The Baha'i is just a kind of an amalgamation of all the. It's like they take the Bible, the writings in the Bible. They take the Quran, the writings of Islam, but then they also have Baha'u'llah, who was the founder of the religion. He was like the next prophet after. So it's just sort of a continuation.
I just know it's the official religion of Dwight K. Schrute. That's all I know.
Scientology? I don't know anything about that one.
I know we went to some cruise port one time. I can't remember if it was Aruba or Bonaire. And they had some sort of like large ship there that supposedly was like owned by the Scientology dude or something. I don't know.
Seems like Scientology kind of chilled out. The Scientologists chilled out a bit because there for a minute they were all over the news. They were everywhere. Now, I haven't heard anything about Scientologists in a while.
Tom Cruise still alive and kicking.
Yeah,
I don't know if he's still into it or not.
You know, one that's a Christian sort of sect that I don't really know anything about is the Mormons.
Mm.
And the only reason why I bring that up is because there's a show that I've been watching on Netflix. It's called American Primeval, and it's like a Western, but it's about the Western expansion and like Brigham Young and like the expansion into Utah there of the Mormons is sort of like the central key of the whole story. I was like, yeah, I don't really know anything about these people.
Yeah, I don't either.
And then we watched recently a horror movie. It was sort of based around Cary Grant was actually the main character in the movie, which was kind of interesting seeing him in this role. But it was sort of based around the idea of these Mormon missionaries, you know, how they always go to like door to door or whatever, and they went to his house, and that was sort of the main. So just twice recently I've had Mormon movies and TV shows on.
Is it Joseph Smith? Is that the Mormon?
Joseph Smith, yeah.
I don't know anything about it.
That's the extent of what I know.
Yeah.
Something about he, I think I'm definitely going to speak out of turn because I don't know, but something about I think that they believe that Jesus showed up in Missouri, and also Joseph Smith found some golden plates that had these weird inscriptions on them, but then they were translated to him by either angels or Jesus. I don't know, but only he had the secret interpretation for them.
That sounds.
It's probably wrong because I literally said I have no idea what I'm talking about, but
sounds way too familiar is what I was going to say.
Yeah, it does.
Secret interpretations.
Let those with ears to hear, let them hear.
If tings. Anyway.
Yeah, anyway, that's all I got. I got to pee.
All right.
I got to pee.